Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world with self-care strategies from Chinese medicine. I'm your host, Brody Welch, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Before we dive into today's show, I just wanted to take a moment and express my gratitude to you for tuning in, but also if you've shared any episodes that you think a friend would really love, or if you've bothered to head over to iTunes and navigated the not very intuitive way of rating and reviewing. But I am grateful to those of you who have, because that really helps other people to know that the show exists in the sea of podcast options that are out there. And so I wanted to give a shout out to this week, hackmybiology.com, who left me a great review that says, Brody, with her beautifully attractive voice, connected Ayurvedic, Chinese medicine, biohacking, sleep hacking, and self-quantification movement and summed it up in one word: constitution. She's a biohacker at heart and shows curiosity and interest towards her expert guests. Great choice of a name. A healthy curiosity, by the way. And I resonate with the curiosity part a lot. In fact, curiosity is a foundation for any biohacking work. If you're passionate about alternative health, then you want to listen to this podcast, as she collectively with her guests drops a ton of helpful nuggets. Thank you, hackmybiology.com. I love, as you know, that synergy between ancient wisdom and modern research. So thank you for taking the time and giving me that shout out. Okay, onward. Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity. I'm your host, Brody Welch, and with me today is a health coach and esthetician and best-selling author. It's Rachael Pontillo here with me today, and we're going to talk about the connection between what we eat and our skin. We're also going to talk about how to get out of a food rut and some practical strategies as to bringing healthy eating, making that even easier to implement. Rachael is the president and co-founder of the Nutritional Aesthetics Alliance, the creator of a popular skincare and healthy lifestyle blog, Holistically Hot, as well as the much-loved online course, Create Your Skincare. She's also an avid herbalist, self-professed skincare ingredient junkie, and lifelong learner. Rachael, it is so great to have you here on the show. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So you've got, you bring together a couple of different disciplines, and I'm curious if you could explicitly tie it together for us. What does being a health coach have to do with skincare?
Well, that's a great question. And I kind of got to the health coaching later. The skin is what started really my story, because I struggled with acne really my whole life. And even though I was raised in a home that valued healthy cooking and home cooked meals, we were not a processed food or fast food family by any means. My mom was a single working mom, but she still cooked dinner and prepared lunch for us every single day. It was still kind of standard American diet food. And I struggled with acne as a teenager, and I tried everything from the medications at the doctor's office to spa treatments and professional products to home remedies, and really nothing worked. So I kind of just gave up on the idea that I could have clear skin, and I just learned to cover it with makeup and, just really was like, okay, this is just my skin and that's just how it is. I'm just going to deal with it. So it didn't get better, which I was told that it would by the dermatologist, by the estheticians. They're like, oh, once you're out of your teen years, it'll get better. Well, it didn't. And it was really frustrating.
Oh, no kidding,
And,
right? Like here you are, you're like, okay, come on, hormone normalization.
Yeah.
And then it happens and you're still dealing with the skin stuff. And
I remember when I turned 20, I'm like, okay, I'm not a teenager anymore. And then, there was a window of time in my early 20s that it cleared up a little bit. And I was like, oh my God, it's finally happening. And then I got pregnant with my first daughter and it came back. I'm like, oh. And then after I had my second daughter, I actually gained about 80 pounds. And that weight would not come off. So I reached a point where my skin was the worst it had ever been. I had developed some health conditions. I had developed hypothyroidism, high blood pressure. I was pre-diabetic, high cholesterol. and I was just miserable. It was kind of a thing where I would catch my reflection and not recognize who was looking back, because that's not who I was. I had been a healthy weight my entire life, and I was used to looking back at acne. But when my body was not familiar to me in my reflection, that's when I really just felt like I felt like I was stuck in some alien body. It was very strange,
I
and it
can,
was very sad.
yeah, I definitely, I can really relate to that in the sense that, um, yeah, that when you look in the mirror and you see and you feel like the person you're looking at isn't you,
Mhm.
and and you feel powerless and frustrated over changing that, it's like that's super painful. And so what did you do?
So I did a couple of things, and they kind of happened simultaneously, but for different reasons. So I went back to school to get my aesthetics license because I knew that, well, my younger daughter, she was a toddler at the time, and I was not losing the weight, but I also knew that it was time for me to think about going back to work, because my husband and I always agreed that when both kids were in full-time school that I would go back to work. So I was thinking to myself, well, what am I going to do? Because before I had my kids, I never really found a career that I liked. And I figured, well, I'll just have my kids in my 20s and figure the rest out in my 30s. So I was kind of at that point where I was in my early 30s, and it's like, okay, that time has come. I have to make a decision. I had a bunch of sales and marketing jobs prior to having kids. I had a degree in, well, I have a degree in architecture, but it's not something that I was passionate enough about to pursue as a career. So I had always told myself, I'll figure it out in my 30s. I'll go back to school, whatever. I'll have time then. So I'm like, okay, well, what can I do that is not like a whole degree? I don't want to go back to school for 2 years or 4 years, because I have these little kids. I had two toddlers at that time. And I wanted to just dive right in and do something that I actually enjoyed, but that also could be flexible, because I felt really strongly that I wanted to be present for my kids. My mom, as I said, was a single working mom, but she was an entrepreneur, and she always was available when we needed her. So I felt really strongly that I wanted to have the same availability for my kids to show up for their school functions, volunteer in the classroom, all that stuff. So I had a friend who does nails, and she said, well, why don't you get an aesthetics license, because you're really good at doing makeup. I'm like, oh, well, I have done makeup before. I actually started doing makeup for people when I was like 17, because of the acne. I got very, very good at doing makeup, because when you have to cover a lot of acne, you tend to get good at doing makeup. So I also considered makeup as kind of a creative outlet for myself, because it was my way of, yes, covering the acne, but also making the best of it. And I do have a design background. I am an artist. So I always used my face as my canvas. So I chose to express makeup very creatively. But aesthetics really interested me, because you can do makeup as an esthetician, but I'm like, well, what if I can learn about my skin and maybe find a way to make it better? So I found out that it was not very long-term commitment education wise, and it was not very expensive. So I was able to go to night school, and I got my license. I was very lucky that my teacher valued the holistic side of aesthetics. She did talk about food triggers like dairy and sugar. She mentioned probiotics. And that was kind of my first introduction to the idea that what you put into your body shows up on your face, which I had never made that connection before, other than hearing the myths of chocolate making you break out and stuff like that. So I did get an introduction from her. And then I also had the opportunity to study with an Ayurvedic doctor who taught more about the food and skin connection, as well as tying emotions into that. Because Ayurveda, as I'm sure your audience probably has heard by now, is really a mind, body, spirit modality from ancient India that really does link every part of the self to whatever symptoms you're experiencing. So that's when I started getting background on the idea that food affects the skin. And
Wonderful.
then,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No, keep going. I definitely want to circle back to some things that you've mentioned, but go on.
sure.
I don't want to interrupt
Yeah.
your flow.
Okay. So I started my blog while I was actually still in aesthetic school because it also came to my attention that in Pennsylvania, where I live, you don't have as much flexibility as a new esthetician to just kind of write your own ticket and make your own hours. Your choices are basically have your own spa or be somebody else's employee. You can't just rent a room in somebody else's practice in Pennsylvania like you can in other states, which had I known that before I went to aesthetic school, I might not have gone because I had one idea of, oh, I'm just going to go rent space and show up a couple times a week for a couple hours and that's going to be my business. That's not really possible in Pennsylvania. So then I figured, okay, well, I already know that I want to work in a holistically minded spa, and there's not too many of them. So I'm going to have to figure something else out, or I'm going to have to find a way to make myself really hireable right out of school because typically new estheticians cannot write their own tickets. They usually have to work at some of the chain spas first, or just for someone else to get their feet wet, get experience, get a book of clients, and then you can kind of start writing your own ticket. But I decided that that was not for me because it would have taken away from the flexibility that I wanted to have. So I started my blog and I started writing about holistic skincare and how I defined that. And back then in 2009, 2010, nobody was writing about that yet. Very, very few people were even writing about natural skincare or green beauty at that time. There were only a few of us. So I was really one of the first ones to write about the connection between food and skin online. So as I continued doing research for my blog, I started learning more about detox. I started taking continuing education classes and certification classes more on the lines of Ayurveda and detoxification, traditional Chinese medicine. I did a Candida cleanse certification course. And I was doing research for a blog post about detox when I came across a book about detoxing for beautiful skin. And I'm like, oh, okay, this will be great. So I get the book and I was thinking to myself, this will be great research for the blog. But when I got the book, I found that it was essentially a diet. And I had already tried a lot of things to lose that baby weight that was really stubborn. I tried working with a personal trainer. I tried Weight Watchers. I tried even diet pills, I hate to admit, but nothing worked. It would be kind of like losing 20 pounds and then gaining it right back. It was that total yo-yo dieting thing where it was just very stressful. So I had kind of given up on trying to lose weight. So when I got this book and found out it was the diet book, I kind of got angry. I'm like, oh, this is the last thing I want. But I also have the belief that things come to us for reasons and they come to us when we most need to receive them. So I figured, what's the worst that could happen? So I read the book, and it was the first time I had ever heard of concepts like food combining. And it talked about additional food triggers besides just dairy and sugar. And it also talked about some other concepts about putting plants first and kind of having meat follow, the idea of eating light to heavy. And it was just something that I had not tried yet. Talked about green smoothies and lemon water. And again, probiotics, digestive enzymes, these were all completely foreign to me. So I figured, well, you know what? Everything that I tried that I was supposed to do to lose weight did not work. So let's try this because this is just so crazy that it might work. So long story short, after about a month, I was down 20 pounds just after adding green smoothies and lemon water and probiotics and digestive enzymes to my diet and cutting out gluten, dairy, and sugar. It was crazy. Those were
Awesome.
the only changes I made. But my skin also cleared up completely 100%, like not even a speck, not even a blackhead.
So let's just review that again. You took out dairy, you took out
Yeah,
sugar, you started
gluten.
you took out gluten. Okay, so those are really are the big three, right?
Yep. In my first
Hmm.
book, Love Your Skin, Love Yourself, I call it the skin trigger trifecta. Now, there are other food triggers that people can experience associated with acne or other skin conditions, but for me, those were my three.
Okay. And then were you doing green smoothies in addition to into how you were eating, or did it
Yes.
take the place of something?
Well, I've never been a breakfast eater. My
Hmm.
stomach has just never been happy in the morning. And
Hmm.
I later realized it was because I was eating really heavy things like pancakes and waffles, which my stomach doesn't like anyway. But instead of eating no breakfast at all, which I had resorted to, I switched to having lemon water and green smoothies in the morning. So
Got
that was
it.
my breakfast.
Got
Yeah.
it. So at this point, you are obviously very well versed in a variety of different approaches.
Yep.
What apart from the first steps of taking out the big three, the gluten, the dairy, and sugar, what would be the next step that you would recommend to someone who's interested in clearing up their skin?
So what I did, and I learned to do this in nutrition school because then I went back to school for nutrition.
Hmm.
After this, once I saw this connection, I was like, oh my God,
Yep.
this is huge. And I need to learn more. So for me, I learn things by taking courses and then experiencing them. What I did was I just added more plants. I just found different ways to add plants into every meal. And for me, it made me crave vegetables like I had never craved anything in my life.
Isn't that awesome when your
It
body
was
starts craving the
unbelievable.
right things?
Yes. It was like everything I learned in nutrition school about crowding out the bad stuff by adding in more of the good stuff, and that when it comes to cravings, you're one of the causes of cravings is that your body naturally craves what it's recently had a lot of.
Yes.
So true, but I didn't believe it because of course nobody wants to believe that you're going to crave vegetables because, you know, until you actually experience it, you feel like you're missing out. But what I realized really quickly, and it didn't take as long as I thought it would, and I want people to understand that when you make a healthy lifestyle transition, it can seem very daunting at first. It can seem like, oh my God, you have to give up all this stuff, and then you have to eat this way forever, and it's going to take forever to feel better. That's not true. It really only took me about a month to start not only feeling better, I felt like a superhero. I was like the Energizer bunny running around. It was unbelievable. I didn't even know it was possible to feel that good. And people thought I was crazy. They
That's awesome. And
thought I
yeah,
was absolutely out of my mind.
and how
Because
long did it take for you?
it took literally only about a month.
Yeah,
And
only about a
I
month.
was down that 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And, continue the story. After the first year, I was down 50. And my total loss over 18 months was 80 pounds. And it's been like, since that all that weight came off, I think it's been about 7 years, and my body's changed because I've gotten older, but I haven't put on any significant amount of weight back. And I've had to make other changes to my diet because we do have to constantly change things as we age. That's important. We have to do that for our skincare too. Our skin ages as our body ages, and we can't use the same thing when we're 40 for our skin as we did when we were 30. And that's the same with the diet. We can't eat the same way as we ate 10 years ago and expect the same results.
It's
So we
really
have to
true.
kind of
A
shift.
lot of people don't necessarily get that there is no one right diet for any like group of individuals, but even the same
Mhm.
individual throughout our lives. Yeah, people, in addition to just, yeah, like we lose the capacity to digest in terms of like that our stomach acid decreases, our metabolism slows down. If we're eating the same things in the same quantities, it's going to have a very different result. And so being able to keep current with ourselves is super important.
Absolutely. And our livers change with whatever kind of stressors we have in our lives. We go through all sorts of things, whether it's with our families or with our jobs. And, all of these things affect our liver, our hormones, our adrenals. And we do have to make adjustments to our diet and lifestyle to accommodate those changes. And this is something I see a lot with people in my audience and also people that I help as a coach. I still do have my skin health coaching practice, but also even with my skincare students, people get really frustrated when the way that they've been eating for a while that worked for them stops working, and they immediately blame themselves. They immediately say, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. No, there's nothing wrong. Something has just changed. And that's not a
Exactly.
good thing or a bad thing. It just is. And that means that you have to change with it.
Right. Our job is to notice it and figure out what to do next.
And not
And
blame
yeah,
ourselves and not
exactly.
judge it.
Right. But to hopefully get the message that it is there to send.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You are a powerful being, and it's really hard to feel that way if you're stressed, overwhelmed, or routinely overriding your body's cries for rest, nourishment, movement, and joy. You deserve to make time to take care of yourself and to enjoy your life, not just get through the day. If you are ready to stop putting yourself last on your own to-do list, you're invited to claim one of the last few spots for the May round of Level Up Your Life, my transformation incubator. We focus on the basics of self-care, but the kind of evolution people experience goes so much deeper. They talk about having more confidence in expressing themselves, finding their voices. They feel stronger, lighter, happier, clearer, and way more stress resilient. Like Rachael, who shares, I'm feeling more comfortable and present in my body, and I can feel the empowerment that comes with that, both physically and also in terms of strengthened boundaries. Thank you for this and for keeping me on this journey of learning, deepening, and growing. It's really an incredible community of conscious women who are serious about showing up differently in the world and living in alignment with the person they know themselves to be. So if you're ready to start living powerfully, I'd love to talk to you. Head to brodywelch.com/level-up and schedule your free call. We'll see if it's a good fit. Now back to the show. So you have a book called The Sauce Code, and you wrote that with your husband, who is a chef. And so
Yes.
I'd love to know a little bit about what that was like writing a book with your husband, first of all, and kind of like, were you two at odds if you were coming at it from like a health angle and he's coming at it more from a taste angle, or like I'm just curious, like give us a peek behind the scenes in developing The Sauce Code.
Yeah, it was a really interesting experience because first of all, I am a writer. I've been a writer for years and years and years. One of my first jobs out of college was as a copywriter. Then I've done editing, I've done ghostwriting for healthcare journals. I've been a writer for many, many years. So the idea to write a book was very easy and natural for me. And of course, I've been writing my blog. So that's it. I think better in written word than I do in spoken word. So it's just natural for me to write. But he is not in any way, shape, or form a writer at all. So when I told him I want to write a cookbook, and it was really the idea of our publisher, because our publisher, who is Sun Group, is our publisher. After my first book came out, and my first book, Love Your Skin, Love Yourself, actually was #1 in 4 categories on Amazon for like 4 months straight. We held that title. My publisher's like, okay, we're going to need another book right now. And I'm like, what? I don't have one in me. And he's like, well, what can you write about that's related to the first book? I'm like, well, I talked about food. And he's like, okay, I'll write a cookbook. I'm like, I don't want to write. I don't have recipes. I'm not a chef. And he's like, well, your husband is, so work it out. So he was not happy about the idea of writing a cookbook because my husband does not work from recipes. He's one of those people who just goes in the kitchen, grabs stuff out of the fridge, kind of throws it together, and poof, it's the most amazing thing you've ever tasted. And he's been doing it so long that he doesn't realize that that doesn't come naturally to people and who are not chefs.
Right. Most people need a process or some
we need a
instructions to
process.
follow.
We need directions. He's like, I don't measure things out in teaspoons. I don't do that. I'm like, well, okay. So I had him literally make stuff, and I was watching him making stuff and writing things down. And if there was something that he was putting in, like sugar or like butter or something that I would have wanted a healthier substitute for, I was writing down what my ideas for the substitutions were. So he really created the framework and the flavor profiles. And I was the one who then went in and said, okay, well, I want this to be plant-based, and I want this to be vegan, and I want the majority of these to be raw, these sauces. So that's when I made the substitutions and I did the writing. But the first part of the book is really not the recipes. So the Sauce Code has 7 recipes. And the reason there's only 7 is because the recipes are meant to be very versatile. They're meant to be used not just as sauces themselves, but as marinades, as spreads, as dips. You can use them in so many different ways. And the whole idea is that when you have these 7 sauces, you don't have to make them all at the same time, but even if you have 2 of them already made in your refrigerator for the week, they can add health and plants to any meal. And I even say in the book at some point, I don't care if you have a burger and fries, and I'm not saying you should have a burger and fries, but if you have a burger and fries and you put one of these sauces on that burger and dip those fries, you're automatically having a healthier meal. And
Nice. So
yeah,
it's like stealth healthy eating.
yes, it is. It's super practical. And, you know, my husband works very long hours. I run 2 companies. I work very long hours. Our children are now 13 and 10. They are both classical ballet dancers who train about 15 hours a week. We are very, very busy and we are often not home. So we don't have time to have home cooked dinners every single day, but we also don't want to eat out all the time because, first of all, it's expensive. Second of all, even if you're eating at healthier places, you don't always know what you're getting. And eating out, I have to say, when you eat out a lot, like if I have to travel and I'm eating out a lot while I'm traveling, when I get home, the first thing I want nothing more than a home cooked meal. Eating out does get old after a
Yeah, it
while.
really does. It really does. I find like when I need to come back to like just cooked greens, I need to come back
Yes,
to like the foods that feel grounding and energizing to me because and that where you know the energetics of the people preparing it and you know the
yes,
quality of where it's coming from, all that goes into it. So you guys are busy people. You have active busy lives, your kids are
we
busy.
are.
And so how do tell me how this works with your lifestyle. Do you make sauces? Like, are these simple enough to be made on like on a weeknight, or do you prep in advance and then just have them to allow? I mean, what I love about or sort of back in when I was going through um, getting a health coach certification in nutrition, the concept of the condiment tray was like
Mhm.
revolutionary to me. I was like,
That
oh
is
yeah,
actually
right.
really, yes. So this
Yeah.
is kind of an expansion on that idea. I'm
Hmm.
glad you brought that up. So what I like to do is I like to have at least 2 of them pre-made. And if you make them ahead of time, store them in a mason jar in your refrigerator, these sauces will keep for about a week. So you can make them on like a Sunday afternoon and then have them for the week. If you want to make more of them and store them in the freezer, you can do that. My husband does have some different feelings about the freezer than I do, and we do talk about that in the book. Um, we have some professional disagreements about the freezer or not the freezer. And he gives his reasons why he doesn't like certain things to be frozen. Whereas for me, I would rather have something handmade frozen than not have it at all.
Right. Yes.
But you know, he gives those reasons. So if that's easier for you, if it's easier for you to just take a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon and just make a whole bunch of them and store some in the fridge and some in the freezer so you have a whole week's worth, that's great. And then we also talk about having your, like if you do whole grains, having some quinoa pre-made. If you want to do it as a salad, you could have it, you could just have your salad blend like ready to go. Salad in a jar, I'm a huge fan of. Many people, we also recommend to many people that you make some meat ahead of time if you eat meat. So make some chicken thighs ahead of time, put them in the freezer if you're not going to have them right away. And you know, something like a turkey burger you can make ahead of time. There's a whole bunch of things that you can just take literally an hour on a Sunday afternoon and prepare and store, portion it out and store it ahead of time. And then when you get home at 8 or 9 o'clock from a very busy day during the week, all you have to do is sometimes just heat things up, but then just toss things together that are already made. It's basically mixing and matching things that are already prepared. So, a perfect example, you have a couple of sauces to choose from. You have some chicken that's already cooked. You have some quinoa that's already cooked. Then you grab some of your lettuce and you get maybe one sauce for your meat and your grains, and then you have another one for your salad dressing. There you go. And to throw all that together when it's already pre-made, maybe take you 10 minutes to throw it together and heat it up.
Yeah,
Super
I
easy.
love that idea, and that's actually a lot of how I get through my week as well, is
Mhm.
by making the staples that can become other food when you add actual flavor to it. And so it sounds like the sauce code is like the solution to like what those flavors could be, right? Like a
Yeah.
different flavor profile. You can have
Each one
your
has a very distinctive flavor profile. So we have a
Mhm.
curry in there that gives you kind of that actually it's more of a Thai inspired curry, my husband tells me, than an Indian one. But there's a curry in there, there's a chimichurri in there. We have kind of like a mushroomy marsala type of thing. There's this fresh raw tomato one that I call it a raw marinara, but you can use it as even a salsa. There's a pesto. So we've got a couple of Italian flavors in there. There's a flavor profile really for every palate. So whatever you like, there's something for you. They are all plant-based. Most of them are raw, some of them are not. But it's a way for you to not only add health to every meal, but to also reinvigorate your palate. So, you know how you sometimes get into a food rut. You end up cooking the same thing all the time just because it's easy and it's quick, right?
Yes.
And everybody in the house likes it. So let's use our chicken and quinoa example again, because I mean, how many ways can you have chicken and quinoa? Well, if you have 7 different sauces that all have different flavor profiles, that's making the same meal different, not only nutritionally, but flavor wise. And I'm not saying have chicken and quinoa every single day because that's not good. But I'm saying that it is a way out of that rut, because once you start experimenting with a different flavor profile, you're going to start craving more of that. And then you'll be inspired to make other foods with those flavors to see what else you like with that same flavor profile.
I love it. It makes so much sense that this is a way that we can start diversifying, really enjoying our food, keeping it simple and keeping it healthy.
And
Um,
also keeping it affordable. And
yeah.
that's important to bring up, because so many people have the idea that healthy food is expensive. And it is a fact that unfortunately in the United States, processed and fast food is less expensive than
Artificially
healthy food.
so because it's subsidized,
I
right?
know it's awful. The whole situation is awful, and I really I pray for a day that flips, but we're not there yet. And when you have sauces, it is a way to kind of stretch things out, which is great. But in the book, my husband also, we do a budgeting section, like a kitchen budgeting and cost section, where he looks at a home kitchen almost from a restaurant perspective. So he talks about what they do for purchasing and budgeting in the kitchen, how they save money and time in the kitchen, in the professional kitchen, and how you can translate that in your home. So he talks about things like here in the United States, we like to buy things in bulk because hey, more is more, right? Well, unfortunately, that leads to a lot of waste. And when you're not eating everything that you buy and things are going to waste, that wastes money. So he talks about figuring out how much you actually are spending per portion. That way you know how much to buy. So if you know that ahead of time before you go shopping, even though it might seem really attractive to buy that giant thing of I don't know, beef or chicken or whatever, if you're not going to use it and it's going to go bad, you're still wasting money. So he's bringing some very practical professional kitchen budgeting tips into the home kitchen. He also talks about what things are good to get on sale and what things you actually should not get on sale.
Oh, interesting. What should
Yeah.
we not get on sale?
Marinated meats typically,
Okay,
and
yeah, right. The
general.
things that are likely to endanger our health.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but think about it. I mean, just like even when you're going to a restaurant and they have a special, it's not typically because it's special. It's typically because they have too much of it and they need to get rid of it, and it's usually not fresh.
It's a good point.
So that's the case in the grocery store as well as in the restaurant. So if it's meat and the meat's on sale and you know you're going to eat it that night, that's probably going to be okay. But don't buy meat on sale and then expect to keep it in the refrigerator or even freeze it and use it several days later, because by the time you get to it, it's not going to be good anymore.
Such a good point.
Yep.
I know earlier you mentioned taking classes in Chinese medicine and in
Mhm.
Ayurveda, and that's my background, and that's what I help people with. And so, what w- I'm curious if what you learned that made the most difference in shifting your outlook on taking care of your skin, or taking care of your or losing weight or digestion in general, like any of the things that you know about. What was some standout aha moments in bringing these Eastern medicine traditions into your life?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know how I could possibly pick one, but I think my favorite thing is that it teaches you to look for the root cause and find it in a way that's intuitive more than anything else. I mean, I know we have functional testing these days that is really excellent for finding root causes of things and finding imbalances that are happening in the body, but functional testing doesn't necessarily teach you how to listen to your body or understand what signals your body is giving you. I think that traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda both do that really well, because it's teaching you, we talked about energetics before, it's teaching you the energetics of what is happening in your body. So if you're feeling a certain way, well, feelings are associated with different things in general, different seasons, different qualities. You know, in Chinese medicine, we have the yin yang, we have five element theory. In Ayurveda, we have the doshas, and each thing has its own qualities, and each thing influences the next thing in a different way. So if you're feeling a certain way, there's always another feeling that's associated with a food or with an activity that you can use to balance that out. But you start by actually listening to what's going on in your own body and by knowing your own constitution. So, you know, the holistic nutrition schools these days really do a great job teaching the concept of bioindividuality, but those really originated with traditional Chinese
Yeah.
medicine and Ayurveda, unlike anything else.
Yeah, really getting beyond what's good and what's bad to what's
Mhm.
good and what's bad for me at this given moment in time with this given imbalance and this given constitution.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. Well, Rachel, this has been a really informative conversation. I've really appreciated getting to hang out with you a little bit. I am wondering if you can just share with us a little bit about if we are interested in continuing to work with you or to get your book, where do we go?
Sure. Thank you so much. Well, my website now is rachelpontillo.com. It's RACHELPONTILLO.com. And that's where you can find my blog. I also have links to other stuff that I do. I do have an online course, Create Your Skincare, which teaches you to kind of take this bio-individual approach to your skincare by using all natural ingredients to nourish the skin from the outside in, while already I'm hoping you're nourishing your body from the inside out. I do also have my coaching program, which you can find at my main website. And I do have two books. I have Love Your Skin, Love Yourself, and The Sauce Code, both of which are available on Amazon.
Awesome. Well, Rachel, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure
Thank you.
speaking with you.
Great to speak with you too. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening today. For more episodes of A Healthy Curiosity, you can visit the iTunes Store. If you appreciated today's show, please leave us a review. This helps other people to find the podcast. You could also head to brodywelch.com, where you can find free self-care resources, learn more about Chinese medicine, and let me know what you'd like to hear about on future episodes. I'd love to hear from you. Till next time, be good to yourself.